Hello.
Hey,
How are
glad we're finally
you?
doing this.
I know.
I'm sorry. We had two other times scheduled and it didn't work out, and here we are. So thanks
That's
for
okay.
thanks for having me on, Dr.
Of
Gretchen.
course. Yeah, we got it working. Definitely. So, why don't you? I don't know how many of my followers know exactly what you do. So, if you could just give us like a brief overview of what you do, that would be great.
Sure. So I work with people with autoimmune conditions, and as we both know, the medical system likes to put people on a bunch of drugs that don't really treat the root cause, often cause side effects, often suppress their immune system, which now we're in the middle of a pandemic. You kind of need that thing, right? And so I work with people on diet and lifestyle to reverse autoimmune disease naturally, mainly because it works better than doing it with drugs. So that's what I do.
I love that. I recently, well, actually, it wasn't super recent anymore. It was probably maybe 2 years ago now, a year and a half. I was at a conference for multiple sclerosis, and someone asked in the audience, what's the one best thing that you can do for MS, or what's the one best drug, I think was the question. And the neurologist said, there are all these drugs out there, but the best thing that you can actually do is a combination of best diet that you can, eating healthy, not smoking, and exercising. But because that's so hard for people to do, to stay consistent at, that's why there's these medications, because people realistically aren't doing that. But one thing that I like about like what you do, and also just what you share on social media, is that you make it seem so easy to eat healthy and, fuel your body with the foods that we need in order to have a good immune system.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, because I was once upon a time someone who didn't eat very healthy at all. And I'm not doing this because it was like, oh, MS and autoimmunity. Like, that seems like a good niche to get into. It's like, I'm sure, like you, struggled with it myself. I didn't have MS. I had something called ME, which is a little bit different. But I was like, I even always said, oh, the last thing I'll ever do is change my diet. But eventually, after trying everything, like, got to the last thing. I was like, okay, here we go. And then, started feeling so much better, I didn't mind, and figured out ways to make it easy and accessible. And so now that's what I do, because really, yeah, people are conditioned to believe that, like, oh, changing your diet is so hard. The only thing I can do is take these drugs that I know, like, have side effects, and I know, or like, don't really work, but like, so yeah, it was interesting. And people want what's the one thing I can do? What's like the one trick, And like you mentioned, it's not a one trick. It's a multitude of things, and you got to change your lifestyle and how you live, because it's your actions that can either create health or create disease. And people like you and I just want to assist people in taking actions that are going to create health.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm curious about you, because I know, and Ritu's on, I just saw is on the live, and she connected us, so thank you, Ritu. And, or maybe it was Miss Jellylegs, I don't, one of you two, right? So thank you for connecting us. But I'm curious your story, Dr. Gretchen. I imagine you must have suffered with this yourself, or you wouldn't like have gotten into it, right? Well, tell me that story.
Yeah, so I don't actually have multiple sclerosis myself. So I'm a physical therapist, and within my first year of graduating from PT school, my boss wanted to open an MS program at one of the clinics. And I had learned about MS in school, but not a ton. Like, at least in most physical therapy programs, you know it exists, but you don't learn the details in depth. And I knew that I knew enough where I was intrigued to learn more. So I offered to run this program. And just with the first several clients that I saw, I felt like the goals that they had seemed like things that most of us take for granted. Where I remember specifically one of my clients was 24 years old. She was a woman, and her goal was to be able to stand for 10 minutes so that she could go to a bar with her friends and stand and order her drink instead of having someone bring it to her. Or I've had countless clients who wanted to be able to walk in to the grocery store without looking like they were drunk, or order pizza and go in to get it instead of getting delivery. Like, all these things that most people don't even think twice about. And it was at that point that I was like, I know that MS requires a different type of treatment. It is not the same as regular orthopedic physical therapy. So that's when I truly decided to go all in and become an MS specialist, because I knew that there were I didn't know what they were at the time, but I knew that there were strategies that you could use in physical therapy to help people best and actually get stronger, actually improve your walking and stand longer, all these things that I was hearing from my clients. So that's when I fully jumped in. And now I've been an MS specialist for 5 years and a physical therapist for 7 years. So I've been almost exclusively working with clients with MS for about 5 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I got to imagine it's a lot more rewarding than helping, you know, the guy who blew out his shoulder playing baseball and just wants to be able to pitch in, like, you know, the weekend league again. Like,
right.
These are serious things that is really impeding people's lives. And not to say that there's, you know, people want to play baseball again, they want to be able to run again, and there's a lot of things that, you know, physical therapy is great for. But I imagine that, I mean, you could tell me about this, that you just felt like you were impacting lives a lot more when you could help people with MS.
Yeah, and when I was in PT school, we had a professor who was teaching us about oncology and physical therapy in the cancer realm. And she said, you know, if you want to be a cheerleader for someone, this is the field that you should go into. So for a while, I was thinking, well, that's what I want to work with. I want to be a cheerleader for someone. I want to not only give them exercises, but give them hope and be there right alongside them. And then, like, as soon as I found the MS population, I was like, no, this is it. And it's so crazy because I've had a lot of other coworkers, you know, colleagues who have said, like, with my goals for clients, obviously our main goal is to improve strength, improve balance, all of that, but also maintenance is really huge. If you can just keep where you're at, that's huge. And I've had colleagues say, like, man, that's got to be, like, really hard and, like, not very rewarding if your goal is maintenance. Like, they're not getting back to anything. And for me, it's a complete opposite. Like, that's huge. It's such a lifestyle change, an improvement of quality of life. If you can, move around your home better, go outside for walks better, or have more energy so that you can go on a date with your spouse, whereas before that wouldn't have been possible because you were too tired. So I personally find it extremely rewarding because there's so many different areas of your life that it affects, not just the one thing, like getting back to baseball.
Yeah, totally. And as someone who was there with, like, I just want to be able to, like, get through the work week and not sleep all weekend and be in chronic pain all the time, like, in my late 20s, that was my ask. Like, that was what I was hoping for. And I think, like, until you, like, really understand the levels to which people are chronically ill, it just seems sort of weird and nebulous. So now you know, welcome to this world where, you know, we really need you.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, can you talk about, maybe, I don't know if it's like the physiology or the biomechanics or however you want to explain it, of how, you know, being active and specifically, you know, the exercises you do with people, how that actually works to help people with MS?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, especially when they've been told, like, oh, the only thing you can do is take drugs, you know, and you're like, well, if you exercise, you know, like, a lot of people are like, well, my medical doctor said don't do any of that. So how does it work?
Yeah, that's a great question because, so as I mentioned earlier, I've been an MS specialist for 5 years, which really, it's not that long, but even just 5 years ago, there were still many doctors and MS neurologists saying don't exercise still because it brings on fatigue, it can bring on heat intolerance, there's so many things that can go wrong with exercise. Now research proves, I'll get into the specifics, but now research proves it's the number one thing that you should start doing right away, right along with diet and cleaning up the way that you're eating. And so a big portion of what I love doing is educating on exactly what you're asking, like the why. How does it actually work? Because for years and years and years, it was thought, don't do this. Like, this is the worst thing that you can do. So basically what research is showing now is that neuroplasticity actually occurs in people who have MS. And neuroplasticity is the ability of your brain to create a new pathway to make a movement happen. So if you have foot drop, we'll use that as an example, and you go to try to lift your toes and there's no movement at all, well, that just means that currently your brain, maybe this is the point of your brain that needs to fire and send a pathway down to your foot. So if you try to move your foot and it's not working, that just means that pathway isn't there. And your brain has the ability to find a different pathway. So basically every repetition that you try to do this exercise, your brain is going to try to maybe do some zigzags or swirls, or there's a million different ways to get from point A to point B, meaning your foot. And so with practice, with the correct type of exercise, research is proving that your brain is actually able to rewire itself. And neuroplasticity doesn't occur in all diseases. So the fact that it does happen for multiple sclerosis is amazing. It's the number one reason that someone with a progressive disease like MS actually can get stronger and get better balance and walk better, because your brain can rewire itself, and it can also strengthen the pathways that already exist. So if you have foot drop, but you are able to lift your toes a little bit, maybe it's not as much as the other side, or it's heavier, it's harder, there is a connection that's working. So every time you try to do the exercise over and over and over again, your brain is actually strengthening that pathway that already exists. So that's what neuroplasticity is, and that's the reason that you actually can improve with MS.
Okay, and so I got to imagine if you're not active and you're not moving, that these new neuroplastic pathways aren't forming, and there's probably just dust gathering on the existing pathways, right?
Essentially, yeah. And one question I get a lot is, well, how long do I have to do these exercises for in order to notice neuroplasticity kicking in and to start noticing this strength? And it's a really tough question because it's different for everyone. I have noticed some clients where I give them the right exercises to do, and literally I see them 1 week later and they can do the exercise so much better. And in that case, the way that I view that is your brain knew what to do, but you've been compensating for so long that it forgot what it was supposed to do. So you're just reminding it what to do. It found that connection that was already there and you're good to go. Now let's get it stronger. And then there are other people who will do the perfect exercises, the exact ones they're supposed to be doing, but they have to do it for several months, or for some people maybe even a year, before they actually start to see improvements. And my best advice for that is kind of what you just said. We know for a fact from multiple research articles that neuroplasticity is working. So your options are either don't do anything, it hasn't worked for a couple of months, you just give up, in which case you will absolutely not get stronger because you're not practicing, or keep going, trust the process. I know you can't feel it or hear it or see it, but trust that your brain is finding those new neural pathways, and over time you actually have the possibility of getting stronger. So those are the two extremes of don't do it, you 100% won't get better, or do it, and you actually have the possibility of getting stronger. Or walk
Sure.
whatever it is.
And I got to imagine, the way people are sort of conditioned in society is to believe that, like, oh, well, if I take a drug, it kicks in right away and I get results right away. So if you're telling me I got to do something for a while and the payoff's like latent, I'm skeptical about that. So yeah, I can see how that can be tough for people. I'm curious about, you said you're able to have people maintain. I got to imagine that people improve as well, right? I mean,
absolutely. Yeah, and I don't know if I've just been lucky or I'm just doing the exact right exercises for my clients, because I have every single one of my clients that I've treated, whether it be in person or online, have seen improvements in some level, as well as maintenance. Like usually the goal is always improvements, and for whatever isn't improving, at least maintaining. But every one of my clients or my members have seen improvements, typically in energy. So therefore they're less fatigue, definitely improvements in strength. And there are so many different muscles that we can strengthen. So for some people that's upper body strength or hand strength, like really opening and clenching and gripping. For others, it's foot drop improves drastically, or bending your knees so you can walk better. So there are ways, and there are very functional exercise, which is the key. It has to be functional to improve strength, which I see all the time. And it's so awesome, especially when you see it in those people who don't think it's going to work. They're only coming to me because someone referred them, and it's not going to work, but here I am. So that's definitely extra rewarding.
Okay. And so what about people who are, I hate to use the word disabled, but like in some way incapacitated, whether they're using, some sort of assistance to walk, or they're in a wheelchair or something like that. Like, is there still benefits that they can see, or exercises that they can do that will bring the benefit?
Yeah, I actually have most of my exercises, if not all of them, now that I'm thinking about it, really start in a seated position. And some people will just stay in a seated position for their routine and their program, even as they advance. And others might advance to a standing position or walking positions. But there are so many exercises that you can do to strengthen your muscles, to strengthen your core, to walk better from a seated position. So, I mean, some of my favorites are like seated marching. That specific movement you need in order to scoot forward in your chair and scoot backwards. So if you need to help with transfers or just move around in your own chair, it's the same movement you need to get into and out of a car, or into and out of bed, or in and out of a shower. So just that simple seated marching, just sitting, lift one leg up, down, then the other side, that is such a functional exercise that alone, if done consistently, you will notice benefits in all those things I just mentioned. Stair climbing is required. So there's so many seated exercises like that are really beneficial.
Wow. I mean, I never would have thought seated marching. I mean, it does sound like just pretty silly. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Most of the exercise, I usually warn my clients, I'm like, you're going to look at this, you're going to watch this, and you're going to think, really? Like, that's what you want me to do? And it's absolutely what I want you to do. They're simple, doesn't require any equipment. You could literally do it as you're eating breakfast or watching TV. And that's another reason I like giving seated exercises, because we sit mostly throughout the day. So yes, it's good to get up and moving, but when you have MS, that often tires you out, so then you can't exercise. So there's a bunch of stuff that you can just do in your normal day-to-day life sitting that can actually help you walk better, climb stairs, get stronger, better core, better balance.
Awesome. So if people want to learn some of these exercises, learn more about what you do and what you teach, like what's the next step for that?
Yeah, I mean, I have a bunch of different outlets. I have Instagram, I have Facebook, I have YouTube. All of those obviously are like the free content. I post videos as well as educational topics specifically for exercise and or physical therapy for MS. And then I also have an online MS wellness program called the MSing Link, which I like to think of as, if you were to come see me as your physical therapist in the clinic, it's all of the content that I'd be giving you there, but it's recorded and you can use it at home or wherever you are in a safe environment. Especially, it's been up and running for over 2 years now, but especially during COVID, it's a way where you're getting access to the best exercises that you can do in the safety and comfort of your own home.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I guess people can check that out from your bio or wherever.
Absolutely. And what are the different outlets that you have for yours, just so my followers know where to find you?
So yeah, mainly it's Instagram that I'm on. I have a Facebook and YouTube that I just sort of, like stuff from Instagram just kind of ends up on Facebook. And then whenever I do a video on Instagram, that usually ends up on YouTube. But yeah, I'd say Instagram is the main outlet for me for the time being.
Perfect. Awesome. And if I can ask you one last question,
Sure.
And I get asked this question a lot too, and I think it's different for every person in every field, but if there was one piece of advice that you could give to someone who is looking to eat healthier, there's obviously so many different diets and everything out there, but if their goal is just eating healthier, they have MS or maybe another autoimmune disease, what is the one tip that you'd give them to help them get started on that?
I would say fruit and vegetable smoothies. It's easy to do. I mean, like a blender is just like a microwave, right? Like you open up the door, you throw the food inside, you close the door, you hit the button. Doesn't require cooking skills. It's easy, it's quick, and it gets those fruits and vegetables in your diet that you need, no matter what you're doing dietary. So I think that's probably the number one tip.
I love that. And that's so true. I just recently, I'm very into smoothies, but I just recently added kale, and you can't even taste it. Like you can add, and as well as like frozen cauliflower I've added. You can't even taste that either. So there's so many ways to hide the taste of vegetables for those that just like despise them, but they're still getting the value.
Sure. Oh, and I guess we got a question in here, but they're coming too fast. Oh, okay. Started juicing, and I want to ask a question. Do you add a juice drink in your daily plan, or do you use it as a meal replacement? So I'll just answer that one. I do like to make juices as well. I find that that's a bit more of a work than like, because you have to clean it and you have to chop it, and the juice process, it gets you a really nutritious beverage, but it's more work. So I tend to do those like on the weekend when I got a little more time. And oftentimes I do make a big green juice with like a whole head of celery and like some kale and some apples. And oftentimes it depends how hungry I am. I might just have it as a meal replacement, might have the green juice and then, eat a bunch of fruit. Is it cool? I just keep answering questions. We got
yeah, go for it.
Too. Let's see, can smoothies be taken as dinner, or is it better for lunch? Either one. I typically do a smoothie for lunch every day. But like I said, like just get in the fruits and vegetables. It doesn't matter when or how or whatever. Like they're just as good for you at breakfast as they are at dinner and lunch. They're just happy you're having them. Okay, and they'll benefit you just as much, no matter how you do it, as long as you're not like frying them or something.
Awesome.
So yes, we have some people on here that are fans of both of us. So that's
Yeah.
fun to see. So what would be your number one tip as far as like exercises and movement?
Yeah. So my number one tip is always because usually someone's asking me like a tip for how to get stronger, like what to start with, and I always suggest picking a movement or activity that's hard for you to do. So for some people that's walking. For others, that's standing up from a low surface or stair climbing. Whatever it is that you want to improve on, do that as an exercise. So if you have difficulty climbing the stairs, practice climbing the stairs. And there's ways that you can break it down where, climbing the stairs requires knee flexion, it requires hip flexion, it requires ankle dorsiflexion. There's tons of exercises you can do, but when all else fails, just practice that exact movement as the exercise, and that's the one best thing that you can do. And then once that gets better, add another one with something else that's hard for you to do, and do that as an exercise.
Okay, interesting. And that actually brings up a question, and I apologize for the noise. Just decided to mow the lawn outside. So I have a friend who's not a patient of mine, but he has MS, and where it really affects him is like his tongue and his mouth. Mm-hmm. And so if he's having a flare, he'll like slur his speech, and he can't, like, that's the main way it affects him as far as like talking and using his tongue, especially his tongue, like his tongue is so yeah. Are there tongue exercises, or like, have you seen that kind of thing? What's some tips for him?
Yeah, so usually if that's one of your biggest issues, you'd go to a speech and language pathologist. And also, just a plug for any MS specialists out there, MS work, whether that's physical therapy or speech therapy, occupational therapy, it is very different from just general physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech therapists. So if possible, do some research and see if you can find someone who specifically works with multiple sclerosis.
Okay.
But so he would likely go to an MS specialized speech and language pathologist because there's a bunch of different exercises that you can do for your tongue, for speaking, for breathing, really exaggerating the movements when you're talking, talk slower sentences and really exaggerate the way that you would say those words. That's the one that I'm aware of, but there are tons that speech pathologists would absolutely help with that. Do you know if he's going to PT or speech and language?
I don't think he's doing that, no.
Gotcha.
So.
There's even, I'm blanking on the names right now, of course, but there are even apps on your phone that go hand in hand with speech and language pathology, where it says, say this sentence, and you say it, and if it can't understand you, you have to say it again. And so it's geared towards like specific words and sounds and enunciations. And if it can't understand you, you have to keep practicing it. And it gives you strategies along the way. There's a few different apps like that that people could look into.
Okay. And now I'm curious about this MS specialty. Is this like a separate certification or
yeah,
what does that entail? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so it's a separate specialization. The specific one it's called the Multiple Sclerosis Certified Specialist, so MSCS. And it's completely separate from regular schooling. You know, for physical therapy, it's a doctorate program, but for MS, we only had like one lecture on it. So to become an MS specialist, you have to have a certain number of observation hours working with people who have MS, and you have to study for a 5-hour exam that covers pretty much all things MS. It's the same exam that neurologists need to take if they want to be an MS specialized neurologist. So it's the types of MS, all the different symptoms, different medications for disease-modifying therapies, as well as symptom management drugs, different types of therapies, nutrition, just like the ins and outs of everything. You have to pass that, and then every 5 years you need to prove that you've done at least 75 hours of learning activities, so like continuing your education and staying on top of research.
Okay. And one other thing I'm curious about, I just had it and I was blanking. What was I going to ask you? It was like something I really wanted to know. Oh, optic neuritis. So you know, oftentimes that's like people who have MS have optic neuritis, which is a co-symptom where they get pain in their eyes. And one of the main things they get is like pain moving their eyes. Like it hurts to like look side to side and all that. And so like if you can't move your eyes or that hurts, like what's the strategy on optic neuritis? Are there exercises people can do when they're not flared up, or tell me about that?
Yeah, so optic neuritis is a tough one. And so one thing that I recently learned, we have monthly guest speakers in the MSing Link, and the one that we had this past month was all about optic neuritis. So I feel like I just got a whole lowdown on optic neuritis. There aren't necessarily eye or vision exercises for optic neuritis, but there are eye and vision exercises for vertigo. So not the same thing, not the same symptom. Mostly for optic neuritis, you typically want to do anything to not aggravate your eyes. So there are strategies where if it's painful for you to look side to side, training yourself to turn to look instead of just automatically, and it's almost reflexive and out of a habit to just look over, but
Sure.
training your body to move more or your head as a whole, not just your eyes. So there's that strategy, but other than that, the other exercises, at least that I'm aware of for eyes, are more for vertigo.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, and that's almost like neuroplasticity, right? Like you're finding a new, I can't move my eyes, so I can do, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Well, anything else you want to share, or parting words or anything like that?
I mean, I guess just the one last thing, because this happens, I hear this a lot where people have tried exercise or tried physical therapy before and it didn't work for them. And my best advice to anyone like that is it's not you. It likely was just that you weren't given the right things to do, because MS specific PT and exercise is different. It has to be functional. It has to promote neuroplasticity. So I would always encourage people to try it again with someone who is qualified and a specialist, so you know you're doing the right things, because it is possible to get better, and you probably just had someone, or maybe you just came up with your own exercises and it wasn't working. So stay with it if it is working for you, or if you're already working with an MS specialized PT or anyone, keep going. It will take time, but it can work. And if you're not, I would highly encourage you to look back into it.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I think people, you know, they always want the quick results, especially when they're used to a pharmaceutical model. And it's one of those things where it's work you got to put in day after day. And like, say you have one off day, you don't do your exercises, or you don't eat healthy, or whatever, and they just go, oh, well, that's the end of it. And it's much more of like a long-term strategy of like, you know, you're developing new habits, you're developing a new skill set. and you're going to mess up, and you got to get back on the horse and keep at it and keep going. And it's the long game. It's not a short-term thing. It's the long game, because you're going to have this, like it's something you're going to have to deal with in the long term. So you got to have the skill set to deal with it in the long term.
Realistically,
I think you might be freezing. Oh.
People fall off track all the time. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
No, go ahead. You froze up for a second, but you were saying people fall off track, and then, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think realistically, people fall off track all the time, whether it's with their exercise or their nutrition. But falling off track doesn't mean that you lost all the ground that you've made. So I love what you just mentioned too. Just jump back in, keep going. It takes time, and it's this lifelong thing. It's not just a quick fix that we're shooting for. So.
Yeah, great advice. Well, hey, this has been a lot of fun. And I guess if you're one of my followers, definitely follow Dr. Gretchen and Dr. Gretchen's. So please do
yeah, absolutely.
Reach out if you ever want to collab or anything again. Yeah, we'd love to do this.
Sounds great. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.